is that reactor?
The molten salt thorium reactor. That if you look on the internet, China's looking like they're going to go ahead with it. India, we're trying to get the states to go ahead with it. But it's a seedier story. This presentation, I only have to worry. I was only worried. I told my friends in Maine, if you hear someone getting strung up in New Hampshire, it was me. For thinking there might be a connection. The next story it involves the oil industry, Kennedy, a bunch of things that everyone's focused on the Texas angle. There's hundreds of books out on that. No one knows the California angle, which following Holyfield I've discovered, and that's about as nasty as the other side. But yes.
It seems like your theory has the benefit of hindsight, and I'm wondering what contemporary articles she might have had access to that would have given her the inspiration that you're saying that you feel maybe inspired her for some of these characters. Were there news articles you can point to that were during the time that you're attributing it to?
In the journal of Ayn Rand, they talk about in there how she was talking about Oppenheimer and the scientists, and how she took a certain feature of one scientist and set up his office to be like that and so forth. I don't know if that was a slip or if it was a clue, because I have found like her leaving these 2 letters that opened it up for me, that she did that 9-month period. Son of a gun. That short 9-month period, she did work on it. And in one of the letters, she talked about the books she read on it, the manifesto, and on a book from an Englishman on why only countries under capitalism have ever created great technology. Anything under statism, they try to catch up. She said she never had any worry about Germany catching up to us on the atom bomb, because everyone there was slave labor and so forth. So yes, there are a lot of references, and in the presentation I've tried to point out the page numbers and the paragraphs. Yes, sir.
A couple of things. First of all, you were going to comment on, say that the premise is correct, that she based her novel or characters on those from Atlas Shrugged, and links them to the Manhattan Project somehow. Let's assume that's true. She did that deliberately. What would it prove?
It would prove, to me, and again, this is looking at hindsight, and most of the research I've ever done over time, there's things going on in the present that oftentimes I always said, I know something happened there. It's going to take me a few years to figure it out, because eventually it gets out. She had talked about Oppenheimer at one point, and he ended up in trouble. He lost his credentials for security, confidentialities, things like that.
McCarthy.
During the McCarthy era. With Alvin Weinberg, he was in a horrendous battle with Holyfield. It's going to be with Lyndon Baines Johnson. It ended up Kennedy. One of the great features, and I'm sorry, we're running over a little, one of the great features about this technology that Alvin came across, you can't make nuclear weapons from thorium. Kennedy wanted to expand the energy of the world and lower price, because that would open up capitalism. But he didn't want to proliferate nuclear weapons. Alvin Weinberg is his advisor and telling him the technology we're working on now will do that. And any waste material you have, you can throw it in the molten salt reactor. It'll chew it up. If any thorium gets contaminated with the plutonium or the uranium-235, it ruins it. You can't use it for weapons. And the size of a molten salt chlorine reactor compared to a light water reactor is almost 1,000 to 1 difference. That's why, to me, what's in this part 2 is it's the oil industry that squashed the technology and padlocked it and fired them.
So you think Ayn Rand was maybe trying to shed a little light on the cover-up?
Yeah. And at the same time, when Alvin was battling this, Kennedy died in '68. John Kennedy, November 22nd, 1962, is assassinated. Excuse me, correct. 1968, Robert Kennedy is assassinated. 1969, they shut down the thorium reactor, and they fired Alvin a few years later. He started putting out word about the safety issues. He is the one who came up with the term China syndrome, his movie. So it's all amazing stuff, and to me, the fact that Ayn Rand, John Kennedy, both may have had this amazing individual that could have changed the world. And he still hopes to. There's on his deathbed, he's saying he hopes someday people will go back to what he was looking at. He died at 92 in 2006. Ripe old age. So, if you agree with what you've seen so far, it doesn't mean it's right. It's just your goal when you leave here is where are their flaws? And if not, keep in mind, you may find some down the road, or you may find additional things that reinforce this. But there's a big movement right now for the thorium molten salt reactor to occur in this country. And right now, there's still a lot of resistance from people in Congress because when they closed down the Atomic Energy Commission in '74, once they shut everything down, it was a suicide pact. The Atomic Energy Commission did things so outrageous that outraged the public. They ended the Atomic Energy Commission, and then a year after that, they disposed of the Joint Committee on Atomic Energy, and then Holyfield retired. He came up with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission that had a lot of the same people in it, and they set up a rule: if you want to look at new technologies, there's huge barriers so that you can't get this right now. And the oil industry started pulling people out of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and giving them jobs elsewhere because I contend they knew Alvin Weinberg was right that there was going to be an accident someday. 3 Mile Island, the day 3 Mile occurred, 40 nuclear reactors were canceled.
Wasn't there a meltdown at Bhopal, India or something?
It was in Russia, but the one Fukushima.
I'm thinking Bhopal Union Carbide.
Fukushima was the big one that's going to cost $250 billion over 10 years to correct. And as I got into this individual sued the Atomic Energy Commission in '82 for all their correspondence. Fortunately, they did not have hard drives where the information would disappear. And when I went through this book, it showed me it's not that the politicians were ignorant. The scientists kept telling them, you can't use the light water reactor for commercial. It's going to be a disaster. And the politicians could say, we know what we're doing. We know what we're doing. What the scientists didn't know is those politicians were in the pockets of the oil industry. And they wanted the nuclear industry sabotaged, but have no fingerprints on it. 3 Mile Island came within 30 minutes of being like Fukushima. So that's what's happening right now.
That's your story, you stick to it.
And for the moment. So thank you.